Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pastor Jardula, and today I have a special co-host. As the team is still in Nicaragua, I brought in the big guns because there's a lot of great things to discuss today, especially when it comes on the law end. Professor Tim Canova is with us today. How you doing, Tim?
Doing very well, Pastor. Thanks for having me on with you today.
It's been too long, my man. It's been way too long. Glad to have you on. We were supposed to have you on a while ago. Our phasers got crossed, but here you are today. And it's going to be an important day because there's a lot of things that I think it's really valuable to have a law professor on the show today to break down and explain what's going on. But first things first, ladies and gentlemen, let me let you all know right now. YouTube is at it again. They've been handing out more strikes than Sandy Koufax. So we can't do the whole show today on YouTube. In fact, we can only do a small portion of it, only the first section we're going to do on YouTube. And then you got to get your butts on over to Rokfin. Unfortunately, they're still at it with the censorship. I think Jason Burmis is still waiting to get off his strike. Slow News Day has just received a strike. And, you know, Slow News Day just got a strike for something they did 3 weeks ago. So when YouTube wants to take you down, they'll take you down. So we're not going to spend too much time on this particular platform, but thank you to all who are here on that YouTube. If you can come on over to the Rokfin, we would greatly appreciate it. But let's get the show rolling, Tim, because we got a lot of things to talk about. We were kind of just jib-jabbing before the show, and I titled this section Kamala's Jib-Jab because she had this little, I don't know what you would call this other than a jib-jab, but let's take a look at this and let's kind of break this down. Go ahead, Oz, play it, roll it.
Six former administration officials last week wrote that open letter urging the administration to change course, to change strategy. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
I said, Tim, I know you're a professor of law, not a professor of linguistics, but could you break that down on what she's trying to say? Because it sounded like to me that even though she was trying to make herself look a little fancy and kind of go around the question, the answer that I got was, no, we're not going to change. Your thoughts? He just froze. He fell out. All right. Well, by the way, I just want to thank Trade Wright for getting in there, saying hello, mates, and Kristen Nye jumping on over to Rokfin. When Tim gets back in, he'll get back on in. Let's take a look at some of the other stuff because I really want to talk about this because at this point, the reason why I wanted to bring this in today's discussion was remember back in about a year and change ago when Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee after the primaries had gone through, we spoke to a lot of progressives that were saying, you got to vote for Joe Biden. You got to vote for Joe Biden. I think purposely, I think they were going to vote and support Joe Biden specifically, there it is, because Bernie Sanders told them to. Joe Biden is my friend, what's going on? And the OMG kind of factor of Donald Trump. To me, when we were getting arguments, we get discussion with these progressives who were so just dead set on voting for Joe Biden because they said they were mitigating damage, right? I couldn't understand it because Joe Biden had 40 years of just bad policy. This is a man who said on the floor that he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle, right? He's the author of the crime bill. Trump, whether it be Kushner or other sources, whatever, he signed the First Step Act. This is one of the most meaningful things that Trump did in his term that really never got talked about. But if you have Joe Biden who signed the crime bill, and then you have, Trump who signed the First Step Act, how can we say that we are mitigating damage and we are voting against a racist in Donald Trump when those two policies are right in your face? Joe Biden has been a warmonger from the word go. And there was no way I was getting fooled to even think about voting for Joe Biden. Now, if you look at his numbers, it says Biden is in a free fall. 33% approval in the Quinnipiac poll. My question is, who are those 33% that are still supporting Joe Biden? Because what did we get? That is the big question, progressives. What did we get at this point? You didn't get health care, right? He didn't ban fracking, all the things that Joe Biden talked about, even ending the war in Yemen. We got none of that. In fact, he doubled down and even further funded the Saudis. So that is the big question as we're growing into this. Is Tim back with us yet?
I am.
Tim, so
Yes.
We were just talking about Kamala's jib-jab. We were talking, basically, she tried to make her answer look a little bit professional or sound good. But when she was asked if she was going to change, basically the answer was no. Your thoughts?
Well, the public opinion poll you referred to, where Joe Biden's down in the low 30s, reminds me of another public opinion poll I've seen recently. When asked, do you think that the presidential election was rigged to help Joe Biden, 40% of Democrats say yes, which I find really pretty interesting. I mean, there were so many shenanigans going on in this election. And yet, if you publicly question the election results, you're deemed to be an insurrectionist now. And yet 40% of Democrats apparently think that there was some rigging in the election in favor of their candidate. But my guess is most of them are quite okay with it, because there hasn't been really an outcry among Democrats that we should be questioning the outcome of the election. When you look at Joe Biden over the years, he ran for president several times. And I think he never really got more than 1 or 2% of the vote in any of these primary or caucus states. And somehow he came out of the grave to defeat Bernie Sanders. Sanders was ahead in something like 10 out of the 14 Super Tuesday states in the polls, but Joe Biden had that miraculous recovery and beat Sanders in 10 out of 14 states instead. And then Kamala Harris, who never got above 1 or 2% of the votes in the primaries or caucuses when she was running in 2020, somehow becomes the vice president. So this is truly the weakest ticket I've ever seen in the White House in my lifetime. And I don't say that in any kind of partisan or political way, because I don't have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. But I really cannot remember in my lifetime seeing a president this unpopular. I guess near the end of the George W. Bush administration, he was down around 24% or something like that. And probably Richard Nixon near the end of his time during Watergate might have been this low. But it's astounding, only a year into his presidency, and Biden really lacks so much credibility, lacks kind of any credibility with most of the public.
Well, let's take a look at this next clip really quick from Joe Biden. Thank you all for joining us on the YouTube today. Remember, this is going to be the only section here. Get on over to the Rokfin. Thank you all who were there. We're going to talk about a lot of great things. We're going to talk about the FDA case. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court decision. We got a lot of things, even the fact that Congress is supposed to be having a joint session anytime they extend their emergency powers. We have Professor Tim Canova with us today. So please, guys, get on over to the Rokfin. But Tim, let's finish up on this section, just a couple more things, because while I lost you there, I was talking about how all those progressives came to us and said, no, we got to do this. Bernie Sanders said we got to do this. I was like, you fooled me once in 2016. You're not going to fool me again. But they said we were mitigating damage, that we had to stop the most racist president of all time, is what Bernie said, and Joe Biden. But at the end of the day, we got nothing out of it. Look at this clip right here real quick of Joe Biden in the White House the other day. And you tell me, Tim, if this guy is fit to still hold office. Go ahead, Oz, play it through.
And I'll stop here so we can get to the briefing started. Thank you for taking the time.
Mr. President, can you have a message for vaccinated Americans who are wondering why they should continue to restrict their activities, given that your health officials say most Americans will get COVID at some point?
Folks, we'll talk about that later. Come on.
Why should Americans trust your administration to treat COVID when the virus is Mr. President, on voting rights, do you think the Republicans would go for voting rights? The virus is currently working, so why should it be just a President? Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Mr. President, do you believe Omicron is the beginning of the end of this pandemic?
Thank you so much, President.
How much longer do you think school people have to wear masks?
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Tim, at what point do they pull the plug right now? And when I say pull the plug, I'm talking about the progressives who went along with this just because Bernie Sanders told them to do so. I mean, we've had this many discussions about Bernie being the catalyst to really bring a lot of people with him. But at what point, do they say, wait a second, this is not what we bargained for. We got nothing out of this. We didn't get debt forgiveness from school. We didn't get the UBI. We didn't end fracking. We didn't even get the money he promised us. At what point do they say, something, I'm not playing anymore? No way, I'm not voting blue. Go ahead, Tim.
Pasta, you're probably asking the wrong person this question, because I'll tell you, when I reached the point when I decided to really stop following Bernie Sanders' marching orders was probably in 2016, when he refused to contest any of his primary losses to Hillary Clinton, which were under very mysterious circumstances. And then 2020 was very much a rerun of that. It's one thing to chant this mantra to count every vote. And Sanders has done that in service to the establishment. When it's maybe in Florida, where he's worried that Andrew Gillum running for governor, there needs to be votes counted, or when it's Joe Biden against Donald Trump and, ballots are still being found days after the election or counted days after the election, the mantra to count every vote. But he really has nothing to say about literally the electronic voting machines that are counting our votes in very mysterious ways sometimes. And when you look behind the curtain at who owns those electronic voting machines, who produces them, who runs the software, these are it's a cartel of three giant corporations. They're not even corporations. Some of them are LLCs, but three giant firms that are themselves owned by private equity funds. So, if Bernie Sanders was so committed to democracy, he should be shining a light on the rigged nature of the elections that seems to keep outsiders like himself and me and many others from having a serious chance to pose of an insider. And now in the Biden administration, our mutual friend Kelly Lane reminds us that the Freedom to Vote Act is designed to keep third-party candidates and independent candidates off the ballots. So, there isn't much in the way of real representative democracy in the Democratic Party. It's very much a party that's controlled by special interests and has been for a long time. And, Bernie Sanders has done a good job keeping progressives on board, and maybe they feel there's nowhere else they can go. But this kind of blind allegiance to the Democratic Party doesn't serve anybody very well.
Well, I don't know, Tim. I think you're being a little unfair. Bernie Sanders is now making a bill that's going to get everybody masked in the United States.
Pasta, it's funny. I saw a tweet of his just like yesterday.
Yes.
And for this man to be talking about masks as a solution, I mean, the Democrats are supposed to be the party of science. At least that's what they say. And we've yet to find a single scientific study to confirm their fixation with these masks.
Yeah. Well, to me, it allows them to know who's going to capitulate to them. And it points out their soldiers. It keeps the fear going. I don't want to talk too much about it, too, because YouTube will give us a strike for that. And it is kind of crazy, the fact that that's where we're at. And by the way, when it comes to the Voting Rights Act, we were going to do a show on this, but it's nothing but hot air. There's not one piece of significant legislation in that bill that really addresses the problems we have with our elections. Not the voting machines and the proprietary software, not the fact that mail-in balloting is just out of hand. And there's a reason why all these other countries have done away with it. These drop boxes with no chain of custody out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing is addressed in this bill whatsoever. It's nothing but a bunch of hot air. And that's that. But Tim, just to close out this particular subject, and if you want to say anything about that, please do. The Democrats they're outside the box thinkers. Take a look at this, because now they're talking about in 2024, they got a plan over here. Democrats tease Hillary Clinton 2024 presidential run in op-ed. Now, the reason why I asked you, Tim, because I know you were done with the Democratic Party a long time. You have students. You work with young people all the time. I'm thinking about them. Can't even they smell this big rat in the room? The fact that they are going back and talking about running Hillary again. It's absurd. No, Tim?
I agree with you, Pasta. It seems quite absurd to me. Hillary was an incredibly unpopular candidate in 2016. I think an awful lot of folks who voted for Donald Trump, they were giving the middle finger to the Democratic Party. And Hillary Clinton has been sort of the poster person of everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party. For them to be even thinking of going back to her now certainly paints a picture of a party that's very adrift.
They said that if she runs this time, Tim, she'll be labeled the outsider candidate because she's so different and younger than Trump or Biden. And then Kamala being so just terrible and down in the dumps, one of the lowest ratings for a vice president ever. It's sad to say. I don't know, where the future lies, but you see a lot of mainstream media and they're still talking about the same things. And when you hear a lot of people talking about the Roni Roan, which we're going to get into right now, they're almost parroting what mainstream media says. They did the same thing when it came to the election. When I was arguing or debating with people about this last election, they were actually quoting Chris Cuomo and thinking that they were independent and outside the box. Tim, your thoughts if the Democrats run Hillary Clinton in 2024, what would this election be like if, in fact, it is a rematch of Trump and Hillary? Will people buy into it, or will we have the lowest turnout ever, depending on the rules of the game?
In some ways, I'm tempted to say it doesn't matter if it's a low turnout or a high turnout. If there's no election reform as to how our votes are counted, public opinion doesn't matter so much, does it? If elections are truly being rigged, and maybe perhaps some of your audience is going to be, well, why is Canova still talking about rigged elections? Well, pardon me, it's the personal experience we went through here in Florida's 23rd congressional district, where just about anything goes, where election results are mathematically impossible. And when you try to inspect the ballots, they're illegally thrown out and nobody's prosecuted. And that's just a microcosm of a lot of the election irregularities, for lack of a better term, that we've seen at the national level as well. Either this election system gets fixed, gets repaired, or our elections will continue to be fixed. It reminds me of the lawsuit that the Becks, Jared and Elizabeth Beck, brought against the Democratic National Committee. I think in hindsight, it would have been well advised to bring a civil RICO lawsuit for the Democrats as a racketeering organization. During that lawsuit, the Democrats defended themselves, the Democratic lawyers, that it's okay if they didn't abide by the terms of their own charter, because the Democrats are a private club that can choose their candidates in a smoke-filled back room. And nothing much has changed with the party at this point. What bothers me is that there's such a little commitment to truth and to fair discussion and debate. And we see this with all of the censorship that goes on, whether it's shadow banning. And I think I was one of the first on the left to be shadow banned way back in 2016, where I might have tens and tens of thousands of followers, but hardly anyone ever gets to see anything that I post anymore. And that's been the case for several years now. But the kind of censorship we've seen at all levels, deplatforming and everything else. And of course, the Democrats are behind a lot of this. And as long as they've got the mass media cartel and the social media big tech cartel on their side, they don't need a commitment to the truth or justice. And, I'll say this. I saw this during my last campaign when Brett Kavanaugh's nomination was center stage. And there were allegations that Kavanaugh had, some of the allegations were really over the top as far as allegations go, that he had participated in gang rapes and things like this. And I remember one of my campaign staffers wanted me to put out a statement condemning Kavanaugh. And at this point, his main accuser had not even testified publicly in front of the Senate. And that's what my response was. Why don't we wait to see how that testimony goes if this accuser has any credibility? And the response was very telling. The response was, what does it matter if the allegations are true or not, as long as it helps to bury Brett Kavanaugh? So it is this ethic that the ends justify the means. And when you convince yourself that the end, the objective, is having your Democratic Party candidate win at all costs, then anything goes. They're capable of doing anything, whether it's ginning up a virus, or it's rigging election machines, or lying about your opponent in any kind of way. And I think it's been several years of this. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Democrats really have to rig the media or even the voting machines to win elections.
Okay, so let's get on over to Rokfin right now, because YouTube's going to be like bearing down my throat with a lot of this stuff. And I want to say thank you all who were here today. Timmy, that was awesome. And welcome. Yes, that's the problem. When the ends justify the means, then everything is all messed up. You know, I have friends of mine who are now following election integrity. They say they care more about the process than anything, because once you look into this, I mean, we have to get back to the basics all across the board. You know, when it comes to the actual registration process, to the voting process itself. You know, this taking hours and hours to vote. You know, when I was in Nicaragua, the average time to vote was 6 minutes. You know what I'm saying? That is part of accessibility, expediency. And Bruce Spiva, you know, he said it loud and proud that they can go into the back room filled with cigar smoke and pick whoever they want. It's a shame that's where we're at nowadays too as well. So, I mean, I don't see a lot of hope for the future, but maybe something will change. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it right now for our YouTube section. Unfortunately, we can't stay over here. Everything we say can be held against us in the court of YouTube. Susan Winchicki, you know, she's a big Clinton sponsor. So I'm sure she's waiting for Hillary to get back into the mix in 2024. So that's it for YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Now get on over to Rokfin. Is it up there right now? Do we have the link? Jilly Love, can you put the link up there for us? Put the link up. Get on over to Rokfin, guys. Now is the time. We'll see you over in Rokfin. Goodbye to YouTube in 5, 4, 3, 2. Jilly, did you put the link up? We need a Rokfin link up. Let me get it real quick. I'll put it up. Hold on. Excuse me 1 second. The link's over there, guys. We'll see you on Rokfin.